Hello everyone and welcome back to Xbox Nation. My name is Fletcher and today we're going to be checking out Highguard, the free-to-play Xbox-only multiplayer game that kind of dropped out of nowhere but immediately had a lot of people arguing about it online, some being good and of course a lot being pretty negative. I've been playing it pretty heavily since it went live now, so there's not going to be a review from the tutorial stage. I've actually spent some real time with it, about 20 hours or so now, and I've got some real thoughts about it. So with that, my name is Fletcher and this is Xbox Nation, and let's dive right into my Highguard review. Let's get that quick answer out the way for you though. Highguard isn't the disaster that some people were hoping it would be, but it's also not something that I confidently recommend to everyone in its current state. It has flashes of something cool, but right now those moments are certainly buried under a lot of stuff that feels half-baked or just pretty plain forgettable. If I had to sum it up in one line, there's a fun idea here, but the execution is certainly not doing it any favours. At its core though, Highguard is a 3v3 hero-based raid shooter. Both teams are going to be racing around a big map trying to grab a key item that then lets you smash into the enemy base. Once that happens, the defending team has to scramble to fortify their walls and ultimately stop the attackers from finishing the job. It's a sort of mix between capture the flag and a bomb mode and obviously MOBA elements, and honestly that structure is kind of the best thing that the game has going for it. That one main mode is where all the fun will live though in your entire playtime. There's no other modes, which is certainly disappointing. It's not perfect, the pacing can feel totally weird, and the loot system does cause some issues here and there, but it did keep me playing longer than I totally expected. I don't think it's fair to write Highguard off as just another soulless live service shooter, because you can actually see the bones here of something quite interesting the more that you play it. The problem is that almost everything surrounding the core idea feels totally unfinished, and it feels like it's ultimately trying to grab other ideas from certain games and trying to make one polished experience, which it kind of fails to do. One thing I actually liked more than I ever thought I would do though was the map size. Even though it's only 3v3, the environments are totally huge and sometimes a little bit unforgiving. I've seen people say the maps feel empty and I don't blame them, but I personally didn't have much trouble finding firefights in my own games. That said, I do think the game could benefit from having more going on within the world. There are moments here where you're just running around looting or fortifying whilst nothing else happens, and it can feel a little bit dull. I'm kind of surprised they didn't add any sort of AI elements, having little skirmishes or maybe having a boss where you have to defeat it and you get some more powerful weaponry. It doesn't really make any sense why they didn't add anything like that. You see it in other MOBAs like League of Legends where you'll have those little minions going out or certain objectives which you can go to and capture control points. I don't understand why there's nothing within Highguard, as it would make it a lot more livable within these huge open environments. One thing that guys kind of help it a lot within these sort of open areas though is the movement system. Highguard is a pretty fast game. You've got stuff from slides, zip lines, base teleports, and then the ability to summon a mount wherever you want. And yes, those mounts are easily my biggest highlight of the entire game. Chasing someone across the map while riding a horse or even a panther or even a bear and dodging those shots and trying to intercept them before they reach your base is quite a genuinely exciting experience, and those moments for me is where Highguard feels like it finally clicks. Base fortification on the other hand is a little bit more mixed, and for me personally I kind of feel it was a neglected element. Before the enemy breaks in, you can essentially rebuild and reinforce your own walls, which feels slightly forced, like they kind of wanted some light base building mechanics here like you see in stuff like Fortnite, but it doesn't always work, and certain characters are better at defending or breaking walls, which kind of makes it feel like a pointless experience. It's not terrible, it just doesn't feel essential. It just feels like they wanted to add in something like Rainbow Six Siege to make it that much better of a game. Speaking of characters, this is where things really start to fall apart as well, as each hero has abilities and an ultimate, but very few of them really do feel impactful, to be honest. Some characters can go invisible, some will mark enemies, and some will smash walls, and then some can throw down some pretty big ultimates, but almost none of those abilities feel even powerful or even satisfying. Even after getting used to the systems myself and trying out practically every single character now, the ultimates just don't hit in the way they should, especially for a hero shooter. I mean, one of them that I constantly use basically has an ability where you can break down every single wall, but that's pretty much all he does. There's no area of effect damage to enemies, nothing like that at all. It just feels pretty blasé and utterly pointless to pick that character overall. In terms of combat itself though, it does feel fine, that's all I can really say. Shooting, sliding, jumping and throwing grenades do feel solid, and I kind of expect that from the team who worked on Apex Legends, and there's even a throwable weapon mechanic where you can recall your weapon like an axe, which does seem pretty cool, but ultimately it just feels pretty useless again. Melee hits do feel good though, movement does feel smooth for the most part, but the guns themselves are painfully bland. You have the basic likes of assault rifles, SMGs, shotgun snipers, but none of them stand out, and even the ultimate weapon you can pick up during the match when it goes on longer, I just feel pretty pointless overall as well. They do work, they're not memorable, they're not really that hard hitting, and early in matches they can feel downright bad until you find the better loot. And that brings me now onto the loot and the progression systems, which again honestly drags the game down. You're constantly going to be juggling weapon tiers, armor ratings, crystals and upgrades, and it can kind of get exhausting at time to time. The crystal system for me in particular feels totally unnecessary, like busy work thrown in just to slow players down in between those raid elements. It kind of reminds me of harvesting in games where it doesn't really feel like it belongs. It kind of belongs in a game like an RTS, and I don't think Highguard needed that at all. It does follow on to the matches though, and they can feel pretty brutal depending on your gear and how much you kind of grind for those crystal systems. Honestly, you might be able to unload into someone and barely scratch them, then yourself gets instantly dropped by a headshot from across the map. That's part of the design, but it does make some firefights feel pretty unfair rather than the intense combat they're really going for. And if you combine that with how visually similar a lot of the characters are, it sometimes feels hard to tell what you're going to go up against and what sort of powers they may have. Ultimately though, teamwork does matter a lot in this game, which is kind of good in an aspect, but playing solo with randoms is a rough experience, and as someone who does play solo a lot of the time, this is where Highguard kind of felt a bit painful for me. Definitely playing with two friends who are communicating makes it a completely different experience. Some of my best moments in Highguard came from coordinated pushes, those last second defenses, and ridiculous chases across the map, and I even made a couple of friends by playing this game who did have comms at the time, and it was ultimately quite enjoyable when you have that aspect. I did have fun here and there, but it was always because of that situation, not because of the shooting or the characters that were carrying the experience, and I think that's why many people are just calling it Concord 2.0. I haven't really touched on it either, but there is free-to-play stuff here, like multiple currencies, battle pass style progression, rotating shops, and obviously, of course, the premium cosmetics, the usual sort of setup you see within these games. The good news is that it's all going to be cosmetic though, so there's nothing sort of being pinned into the game that makes you overpowered. The bad news is that almost none of it is actually interesting at this moment in time. The skins, emotes, and unlocks just don't feel exciting enough to chase, even if you're someone who usually likes that stuff. There's nothing really animated here, which you kind of expect from the style of hero shooter that it is. It's really just bland and like, I mean, come on, you're getting a skin here which literally changes your gun with a green camo for Christ's sake. It's very dull and lackluster, but no doubt I'm pretty sure that will improve down the line. Performance wise though is actually where I wanted to highlight the majority of this review today, simply because honestly it's not a flawless experience, and I'm sort of shrugging my shoulders and rubbing my hands on my face right now just because of how bad it is on Xbox consoles. There are occasional frame drops and visually it looks incredibly fuzzy or quite inconsistent across the board. There's nothing game breaking at all, and for me I did have a good time with it, but it doesn't feel as polished as you kind of hope, especially for something launching into a competitive space. I do have to say as well that the draw distance is really lacking massively on the Xbox consoles. I've been playing this on my PC as well, and yeah, it's just not a looker. In terms of visuals and frame rates though, the Xbox Series X, from what I've noted so far, does try to hit an internal resolution of 1440p, but it does upscale it pretty heavily, hence why it looks blurry across the board, especially on this higher end system, and the native resolution from what I've worked out seems to be in the range of sort of 1080 to 1108p. As I mentioned, it is insanely blurry, and I expect the upscaling tech is causing most of those issues. The frame rate for the most part though is okay on this Xbox system, but again it does suffer from drops, especially within raids or in high-end action sequences. The Series S on the other hand, oh boy, it just doesn't look good. We have some phenomenal games over the years, and when it comes to visuals on the Series S, this certainly ain't it, chief. The resolution is a measly 720p and heavily uses upscaling tech to hit 1080p, and even then is a high target and the frame rate is pretty inconsistent. Overall, I would personally avoid it on the Series S, and that's especially until we see some more optimization down the line. Additionally, I do have to mention that there's no settings for you to change either within the menus for the video elements. There isn't even an FOV slider, and as someone who usually sits at sort of 100 to 110 sort of range on FOV sliders in competitive games, it's very narrow and made me feel claustrophobic at many moments. I don't understand how you can ship a game in 2026 without the basic setting, especially within that competitive space. So where does that leave Highguard? Well, for me it's underwhelming, but totally not hopeless. The mount-based chases, the base raids, and the back and forth matches can be really fun in the right moments. Unfortunately, the generic characters, weak progression, bland weapons, and awkward systems weigh it down hard. The performance also doesn't provide any favors either, and the optimization is just a big no-no, especially from a team with so much talent. But hey, that's UA5 for you. If the developers stick with it, add more modes, tighten up progression, and optimize the game to a reasonable standard, I could see this being something totally worth revisiting down the line. A year from now, this could be a totally different game. Right now though, it's hard to recommend over many other multiplayer options out there, and that's why I'm just not going to recommend it today. I'm going to stick it at the Xbox Nation bronze rating. There's a lot of improvements to happen here, but I'm hopeful that it could be a good game in a few years' time. But that's just my take. But for now, I do want to hear from you. Did you try Highguard? Did it click with you? Or did you just bounce off it straight away? Do let me know what you think about it in the comment section below. If you did enjoy this review, a like really helps me out on the channel and kind of gives me feedback. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next video.